When I was probably 8 or 9 years old, I was having really bad nightmares, and I had been having these bad nightmares for years. And even when I was little, before I can remember, there's a story that my mom loves to tell about when I woke up in the night and I'd have these nightmares where I was basically awake, but I wasn't, and I would run around and be scared. And they were staying in a hotel room with me and my little brother, and I got up in the night and went out of the hotel room and my dad had to chase me down the hallway in his underwear. So I was having these nightmares still at like 8 or 9 years old. And I remember what really triggered it was my mom started traveling for work. She had got a new job and she was away a lot. And I was just worried about, that or the flying. Flying, I was terrified of the thought of her flying. I don't think I got on an airplane myself until I was 14 or 15 years old. So I was terrified that the plane was going to crash, and I was obsessed with this fear, and I was having nightmares all the time. And in the middle of the night, I'd wake up crying, and sometimes I wouldn't even remember. I had these weird dreams as a kid where I would sometimes remember the next morning that I had been up in the night crying and scared, and other times I would have no recollection of it. And my dad would be like, "Do you remember that?" And I'd be like, "No." So my mom at one point, I remember at bedtime when I was 8 or 9 years old, was like, "Okay, here's the deal. This is a mind over matter situation," and she used the term mind over matter. Those are her exact words. And she said, "You need to imagine yourself sleeping with no nightmares, and you need to decide that you're not going to do this anymore. You're going to need to focus on the result that you want," was basically what she said. And that made sense to me. It didn't even seem woo woo. And of course, when we were kids, our parents know everything and we just believe them, right? So I was like, okay, well, I'll try this. And I remember just, yeah, trying to believe and imagine what my life would be like without nightmares. And it worked. My nightmares almost completely went away at that point in my life. And I was just sitting here thinking, sipping my coffee, thinking about how funny it is how so many of us hear these kinds of concepts throughout life, but we don't really own them. We don't really make them our own. And I was thinking about some certain people that don't have this ability to mind over matter things. They seem to not have developed it, or it wasn't taught to them young enough, or they don't really believe it's true. Maybe they think it's too woo woo. They don't really maybe realize the power of our brains. But it's been interesting how throughout my life I've used that mind over matter thing, and even envisioning what I want for my life, and then as you envision it and embody it and pretend like it's already happening, it eventually happens. And sometimes when you pretend something's going to happen and something you think you want, you realize in that moment when you're really doing a good job of pretending. And I was the playhouse pretend girl when I was little. I've always been really good at pretending. I sometimes would find out that I didn't want that thing. I didn't want that part of, my dream to actually be my dream anymore. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I actually noticed that this happens and then that happens. And this is all from imagining things from happening. So, what's something in your life that you're going to mind over matter? What's something in your life that you're going to take control of and you're going to change by using the power of your mind?